Yes, you're very well heard. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon from Warsaw. I'm very happy being here. Thank you very much for the invitation. The topic of the conference is, I would say, very interesting and very demanding when it comes to the changes of curriculum and challenges of the future which comes. So I'm representing the Institute of National Remembrance, one of the biggest institution which deals with the contemporary history, actually probably the biggest institution which deals with history, because we've got more than 2,300 employees with more than 130 historians. So dealing with the Second World War and until the fall of communism. And also the IPN plays multiple roles, being one of the biggest archives in Poland, having more than 90 kilometers of documents, mostly declassified, which is also unusual and unique in European or on a worldwide scale, because 99.7 or 8% of the files from the communist period are being declassified, even those which were perceived until recent years as vital to national interests. Those files were also declassified. So we are archive, we are research institution, we are also institution responsible for education. And in this framework, I would like to say a few words about our projects, which deals with using new technologies, with which are set up for tackling or dealing with how the history should be taught in the contemporary world. So firstly, let me say about starting point. So the question is how to present the history in an interesting but also proper way, and how approach pupils and students in order to master and recognize their interest in those topics. And until recently, the APN tried to balance between the traditional and more modern approach. And that also applies to tools which are being used. So what I mean by saying the traditional ways of teaching, for example, preparing exhibitions, writing books, preparing lesson scenarios based also on real stories, based on secret police files, organizing lectures for students, for pupils, for ordinary people interested in history, producing movies, collecting oral evidence, so-called oral history. And since some time, the APN tried also to enhance those, I would say, traditional tools by adding a new addition, like, for example, using comic books. And the IPN published many series about, for example, the young members of anti-German and anti-Soviet resistance during the Second World War. Moreover, visits at the archive became this kind of a new approach where pupils, students could touch the documents, could see them on their own eyes, could feel them, could see how they were destroyed, for example, in 1989, when the communist intelligence tried to get rid of many, I would say, sensitive documents, and some of the scraps of the papers which were not destroyed, the documents were preserved and now could be used as evidence to teach about the transition period. Moreover, the board games became this very important part of using new technologies. The board game Hue, which was already mentioned here, it was produced in more than several dozen, hundreds pieces. The IPN had also to sell the license to a private company because it was too hard, too difficult for the state institution as IPN is to produce and to respond to such high demand, not only in Poland, but also in other countries. So board games, which became this flagship program of the IPN like 10 years ago, these were like step further in making the history more interesting for people. And now, since like 2 years, the IPN did another shift. did another shift, which came from the perception that people are changing. People spend more time in the internet. Most of the people, they got like smartphones, which became the right hand. They spend more social, political, or cultural activities in the web. They are all the time online. Moreover, they are looking for information not in the libraries, not in books, dictionaries. They rarely go to traditional conference halls. Instead of that, their main source of information is internet. So how to approach that trend, this situation, this rising, I would say, global digitalized era, which is now happening, how to take advantage of new technologies in teaching history, and how to use the virtual world to attract and activate the young generation to learn about contemporary Polish history. And those were the questions which were asked by the Office of New Technologies of the IPN, which was established 2 years ago. So how to combine traditional archival work with scientific research and also with education. So firstly, what the Office of New Technologies did. Firstly, they had to identify the problem and set the agenda. In order to identify the problem, they did the sociological survey about the new generation, the Polish youth, what they think about history, what kind of experience they had with the history during their primary and secondary school, how do they perceive the history in the way it's being taught, what are their habits, what is their way of life, how much time they are spending online. And what was the main takeaway from this research is actually that those young people are interested in history, but they often seek alternative sources to those traditional way of acquiring knowledge. So the second step in those process was how to approach that challenge. So the answer which the Office of New Technologies proposed was to combine virtual reality with education. And that's how the IPN produced its first project, which is called Cypher's Game. It's a gaming project prepared as a FPP, so first personal perspective, consisting of several missions. And those missions describe the course of the Polish Bolshevik War, and the player has to contribute to Polish cryptology and has to also contribute to Polish war effort towards the Soviets. So what he or she has to do is to break the ciphers, ensure radio communication, and also neutralize the armored trains. So that game actually was launched 2 years ago, and it's available for free. It's like player does not shoot or kill enemies. The level of violence is very low. I would say there's like maybe not non-violence game. I'm not a specialist in computer games, but actually I did use play in that. So the player has to use brain, has to think about memory, about ciphers. He has to look into the rooms and so on. What is also important is that the game was not invented artificially. It was based on actual events. So the player's mission reflects historical events, historical documents, where you use secret police files, where you use also army records to shape the final design of the game. And the story begins at 1920 at the Battle of Korosten. And I do have like 2 minutes, so I will try to share and just show you the trailer so you can download it. It's for free on the Steam platform. So let me check if it works. Do you see the trailer?
Yes, it's visible. Is there supposed to be sound?
I do hear the sound. Maybe you don't hear, but I don't know how to do it. So,
can the technicians look into this? Is it possible that we have the sound of the video as well in the room?
okay, so that's the trailer. If you want to check the game, it's available online for free because it was part of the project by the IPN. And let me just stop to share the screen. And what is also important that the game, as it uses non-violence tools, it has also, it's not only a game because it goes with a booklet about the Polish Bolshevik War. It goes also with more biographic and bibliographic information for everyone who would be more interested to acquire that knowledge. And moreover, that game became the part of the Ministry of Education program and is being applied, or teachers are encouraged to use it during history lessons as a part of encouraging students to learn in history. So that was the game which was launched 2 years ago and still is available. But a couple of days ago, the IPN launched another gaming project which is called Aviators of Freedom, and the game is more sophisticated, I would say, because now the player can shoot and take part in various missions. So,
Mr. Gasztold, I'm sorry, please, I have to ask you to conclude. It's very interesting, but for the time, we have to cut it short. I'm sorry.
Yes, just to conclude, all those trailers and games are available on Steam, on Apple, and other those websites. So to conclude, I mean, I think that's a step forward. I mean, this kind of education through games, computer games, and VR, because they goes also with the VR, is something interesting, and we should think about developing these ideas and try to find a good balance between traditional way of teaching, using also new technologies in order to attract people and then focus with more, I would say, old school methods. Thank you very much for your attention.